Give me 1 week of your attention, and I will hand you back a life that runs itself. Not a tidier desk, not a better morning routine, your whole life in order. The money, the work, the body, the people in it, and the noise inside your own head, all arranged around one thing and finally pulling the same direction. That is an outrageous promise, and I am not going to give you the 7 steps yet, because if I list them all now, you will nod at every one of them and change nothing. Nodding is what that is for. So first, where they come from. They were not written this year. They were written in the 1930s, in the worst decade anybody then alive had ever seen. A quarter of the country had no work. Banks had closed with people's savings inside them. And that is the strange part. The greatest body of material ever produced on how to organize a human life came out of the exact decade when human lives were falling apart fastest. 1934, 1936, 1937. 3 years, and out of them came most of what is still being repackaged and sold to you today. One of those books is the spine of what we are about to do. It sold more than 1 million copies. It was written by a woman almost nobody names anymore, and the claim at the center of it is the most uncomfortable sentence in this entire field. Here is the shape of the 7 so you know where we are going. First, deciding what the life is actually for, because you cannot organize a thing around nothing. Second, the diagnosis, and it is not a scheduling problem, and it is going to sting. Third, the single instruction that dissolves it, which is 1 sentence long and is the whole method. Fourth, getting it onto paper the same day, the way the men who built things in that decade were told to. Fifth, a set of small deliberate commands that look pointless and are not. Sixth, how to correct a course instead of starting your life over for the 9th time. And 7th, how to run all of it until it stops feeling like a system and just becomes how you live. 7 steps, 1 week, let us go. Step 1, decide what the life is actually for. You cannot organize around nothing. That sounds obvious, and almost nobody has done it. Ask a person what they are organizing their life around, and you will get a job title, or a list of responsibilities, or a slightly embarrassed silence. They have a calendar full of things and no answer to what the things are for. And this is where an entire industry makes its living. Every January, several 100 million people go out and buy the shape of an organized life. The new planner, the new app, the desk, the routine filmed at 5 in the morning. None of it is wrong exactly. It is just downstream. They are selling you the container, and not one of them will ask you what you intend to put in it, because that question does not sell anything. So the system gets bought and used for 9 days and abandoned. And the person concludes they lack discipline. They do not lack discipline. They lack a destination. Napoleon Hill spent 20 years and interviewed thousands of people who had failed, and lack of a decision sat near the very top of the list of reasons. Not lack of talent, not lack of luck. He also noticed something about the ones who succeeded, and I want you to hold on to it, because it is the opposite of what most people do. They reach decisions promptly and change them slowly. Everyone else did it the other way around. They took months to decide anything and then abandoned it within a fortnight. So step 1 is a decision, made today, made quickly, and then left alone. Here is how to make it. Do not ask what you want. That question is too big, and you will end up writing a poem. Ask instead, what would have to be true in 12 months for me to say this year counted? Write 1 sentence, not 5, 1, and put an edge on it. If it is money, put the figure in. If it is work, name the thing you would be doing on a Wednesday afternoon. If it is your body, name the weight or the distance or the number that would tell you it happened. If it is a person, name the relationship and what it would look like on an ordinary evening. Then read it back and ask the hard question of it. Is this actually mine? Because a surprising amount of what people write down on that line was installed by somebody else. A father's idea of a serious job, a comparison with somebody you went to school with, a version of your life you agreed to when you were 23 and have not reviewed since. The test is simple. If you got the thing and nobody ever found out, would you still want it? If the answer is no, you have written down somebody else's aim, and no system on earth will organize a life around a borrowed destination. Get one honest sentence. That sentence is the peg. Everything for the next 6 steps hangs on it. Step 2, find the will to fail. In 1936, a woman named Dorothea Brande published a book called Wake Up and Live. She was an editor and a writer, not a preacher and not a salesman, and the book went on to sell over 1 million copies and get made into a film. Her central claim is the one that stings, so here it is straight. Most people are not failing by accident. They are failing on purpose, not consciously, not deliberately, but reliably. She called it the will to fail, and she said that once you look for it, you find it everywhere, in decent, intelligent, hardworking people who cannot understand why their lives will not come together. Now, before you push that away, notice that it is not an insult. It is a diagnosis, and it is a far kinder one than the alternative. The alternative is that you are lazy or stupid or unlucky or fundamentally broken. Brande's version is that you are none of those things. You are simply well defended, and the defenses are working perfectly, and nobody ever told you they were there, because failing does something for you. That is the part nobody says out loud. A life that never quite comes together is protecting you from a specific, identifiable thing. And until you name that thing, you will keep buying planners. Watch what it protects. If you never finish the work, it is never judged. A half-finished thing is still potentially brilliant. A finished thing is just what it is, and people get to have opinions about it. If you never ask for the higher price, you are never told no. If you never fully commit to the person, you are never the one left. If you stay busy enough, you never have to sit still long enough to feel how far off you are. So here is the exercise, and it is uncomfortable, and it takes about 10 minutes. Take the sentence you wrote in step 1 and ask honestly, if this happened, what would I lose? Do not answer nothing. Everybody answers nothing, and it is never true. There is always a cost. You might lose the excuse you have been leaning on. You might lose the sympathy. You might lose the version of yourself that everyone in your family already knows how to deal with. You might have to become a person your friends have to reconsider. You might have to find out what you can actually do, which means you might have to find out that it is less than you have quietly been telling yourself. That last one is the big one. As long as the thing is not attempted, you get to keep the fantasy of what you could have done. The moment you attempt it, you trade the fantasy for a result. And a lot of people, when you look closely, would rather keep the fantasy. Write down what you would lose. 1 line. That line is the will to fail in your handwriting. And it is the single most useful sentence you will write this month, because you cannot dismantle a defense you refuse to look at. And here is the good news, and it is the whole reason Brande's book worked. Once it is named, it loses most of its power immediately. It only ever operated in the dark. Step 3, act as if it were impossible to fail. Brande spends the first half of that book on the diagnosis. Then she gives the cure, and it is 1 sentence. Act as if it were impossible to fail. That is it. That is the method. And when people first hear it, they file it as a slogan because it sounds like the kind of thing printed on a mug. It is not a slogan. It is an instruction about behavior, and it is deadly precise once you understand what she is not saying. She is not saying, believe you cannot fail. You cannot make yourself believe something by deciding to. She is not saying be positive, or visualize, or repeat something into a mirror. Notice how much lighter the actual instruction is than any of that. She says act, behave, carry yourself for the next hour the way you would carry yourself if the outcome were guaranteed. And the reason that works is not mystical. It is that failure and success are not mainly produced by luck. They are produced by 1,000 small behaviors a day. And every one of those behaviors is downstream of a posture. Watch a man who half expects to fail. He sends the email in a way that gives the other person an easy exit. He mentions the price apologetically. He arrives with the caveats already loaded. He does not follow up because following up would be pushy, and being pushy is dangerous when you already suspect the answer is no. Every one of those is a small hedge, And every hedge quietly lowers the odds. And when the thing does not work, he has his evidence. Now watch the same man acting as if failure were off the table. He sends the shorter email. He says the number and stops talking. He follows up on Thursday because of course he does. He is not more talented that day. He simply stopped paying the insurance premium. That is what the will to fail costs you. It is not one big self-sabotage. It is 100 tiny insurance payments a day, each one small enough to justify. So here is how to run it starting this afternoon. Pick 1 hour, not the whole day, because the whole day will beat you. 1 hour, and inside that hour, before every decision, ask a single question. If this could not fail, what would I do right now? And then do that thing. Do not feel anything in particular. Do not work up any confidence first. Confidence is the reward for the behavior, not the entry fee. Just take the action a person with a guaranteed outcome would take. You will find, by about the fourth or fifth decision, that you already knew exactly what the unhedged version was every single time. You have always known. You were just choosing the other one because the other one is cheaper on the day and far more expensive over a decade. Do 1 hour today, 2 tomorrow. That is the method that sold 1 million copies in the 1930s, and it is still the fastest thing in this entire field. And if you want more of this material, the old kind, the stuff that actually worked before anybody had a personal brand, then subscribe because that is the only thing this channel does. Step 4, put it on paper the same day. A decision that stays in your head is not a decision. It is a mood, and it will be gone by Thursday. Napoleon Hill published Think and Grow Rich in 1937, 1 year after Brande, and it went on to sell more than 20 million copies before he died. And the step in it that people skip is not the exciting one. It is the 6th one, and he called it organized planning. His demand was blunt. Whatever you have decided, you write a plan for it, and you write it the same day the decision is made. Not the perfect plan, not the plan you can defend. A plan on paper with the first several moves in order. And then he says the thing that saves people, which almost nobody remembers because it is not motivational. He says the plan will probably fail. He expects it to. And when it does, you do not go back and question the decision. You build another plan and you go again, and if that one fails, you build a third. That is the difference between a plan and an aim. The aim is fixed. The plan is disposable. Most people have it precisely backwards. They cling to the plan they made in March, and when it does not work, they abandon the aim, which is the one thing that was never supposed to move. So the work here is short and physical. 1 page. At the top, the sentence from step 1. Underneath it, 3 columns of thinking, and you can do this in 15 minutes. What has to be true for that sentence to happen? List it plainly. Not tasks yet, conditions. A certain amount of money coming in, a certain skill you do not currently have, a certain person who would need to know you exist. Then, under each condition, the first move, not the whole route, the first move only, small enough to do inside a week. And then, the dates. A move without a date is a wish with a nicer haircut. There is one more thing to do with that page, and it is the part that separates people who do this for a month from people who do it for a decade. Keep it. Do not throw it away when it goes out of date. Start a book, an actual paper one, and put every one of these pages in it. Matthew McConaughey has kept journals since he was 14 years old, decades of them. And when he sat down to write about his own life, he did not have to reconstruct anything from memory, because he had the record. He could look back and see exactly which decisions had turned out to be the hinges and which had turned out to be nothing. And that is not a sentimental exercise. That is data about your own life that almost nobody bothers to collect. You cannot see the pattern of your life from inside a single week. You can see it plainly across 3 years of pages. And the pattern is the thing that tells you what you are actually built for. Step 5. Give yourself 12 small commands. Now we come to the strangest part of Brande's book, and the part I have found does the most work. She gives a set of exercises, and when you first read them, they look pointless, deliberately so. That is the entire design. She tells you to spend 1 hour, In the middle of your ordinary company, saying nothing except in answer to a direct question, not sulking, not making a performance of it, just ordinary and silent. She tells you to think about one single subject for a set stretch of time without letting your mind wander off it, and to start with 5 minutes because you will fail at 30. She tells you to write a letter or hold a conversation for a quarter of an hour without using the words I, me, my, or mine. She tells you to plan 2 hours of a day in advance and then live those 2 hours exactly according to the plan, whatever happens. She tells you to pause on the threshold of a crowded room and size it up before you walk in. And she tells you to write commands like these on 12 slips of paper, seal them in 12 envelopes, shuffle them, put them in a drawer, and then at a set point every month, pull one out and obey whatever it says. Now, why on earth would any of that organize your life? Because every one of them is the same exercise underneath. Each one is a small, arbitrary, entirely voluntary command that you gave yourself and then obeyed at a moment when nothing whatsoever was forcing you to. And that is the muscle, not willpower in the gritted teeth sense. Something quieter and far more useful. The demonstrated experience of instructing yourself and being obeyed. Most adults have almost none of it. They obey deadlines, bosses, hunger, and other people's expectations all day long, and they cannot remember the last time they told themselves to do a small thing for no reason and then simply did it. That is why the big resolutions collapse. You are asking a person who has never been obeyed to be obeyed on something enormous on the first attempt in January. So build it small. Pick one of hers this week. The hour of silence is the one I would start with, because it is difficult in a way that nobody notices, and by the end of it, you will have learned something uncomfortable and true about how much of your talking is nervous. Then write your own 12. Take a walk with no destination. Go a day without the news. Say yes to the next reasonable request without weighing it. Take a different route to the same place. Sit for 10 minutes and do nothing at all. No screen, no music. Seal them, shuffle them, pull one on the first of the month and obey it. None of these tasks matter. That is the point. Their entire purpose is to prove to the deeper part of you over and over in low-stakes conditions that when you say a thing is going to happen, it happens. Do that for a season and the large instructions start landing differently because you have built a track record with yourself. Step 6, correct the course. Do not restart it. Here is what is going to happen, so let us deal with it now, rather than in 3 weeks when you are standing in it. You will fall off. Not might, will. There will be a Tuesday where the whole thing collapses and a week where you touch none of it, and a stretch where you look at the page from step 4 and feel slightly embarrassed by the person who wrote it. And at that moment, you will reach for the single most destructive move in this entire field, which is starting over. New page, new system, fresh start Monday. Everything from before, quietly binned. Bob Proctor used to make a point about aircraft that fixes this permanently. A plane flying from one city to another is off course for the overwhelming majority of the flight. Wind moves it, weather moves it. It drifts left and something corrects it, and then it drifts right and something corrects it again. It is almost never precisely on the line, and it lands on time at the right airport. Nobody in that cockpit at any point proposes returning to the departure city and beginning the flight again properly. That is what you do to yourself. You go off course, which is normal and expected and built into the physics of the thing, and instead of a small correction, you scrap the whole flight and taxi back to the start. And every time you do that, you lose everything you had built, and you get to feel the fresh, clean thrill of beginning again, which is, if we are honest, part of the appeal. Beginning is exciting. Continuing is not. Hill's phrase for the wobble was that temporary defeat is not failure. Those are two different things, and he was insistent about it because he watched people quit inside a hair of the result, having mistaken one for the other. Temporary defeat is information. It tells you the plan was wrong. Failure is a decision you make about yourself, and it is usually made on a bad afternoon with no evidence. So build the correction in advance before you need it. 2 rules. First, the aim does not move, ever. Not when it is going badly, not when it is embarrassing, not when somebody asks how it is going, and you have to say, still working on it. The aim was decided promptly in step 1, and it changes slowly, if at all. Second, the plan is expected to be wrong. When a week goes badly, you do not ask whether you should be doing this. You ask one question: what needs adjusting? Then you adjust that one thing and you carry on from where you are, not from the beginning. And pick a day. Sunday evening is as good as any. 10 minutes, the page in front of you, and 3 questions. What moved this week? What did not? What is the one correction? That is the whole review. It is not a ceremony, and it does not need an app. 10 minutes a week is what turns 7 steps into a life instead of a video you once watched. Step 7, run it until it stops being a system. Here is the last one, and it is the shortest, because there is nothing clever left to say. You run it, daily, long past the point where it is interesting. That is the whole difference between the people who did something with this material in 1937 and the people who read the same books and did nothing. It was never comprehension. Everybody understood it. Some of them kept doing it after it got boring. And there is a specific reason daily matters, rather than intensely and occasionally. What you are actually doing every morning is telling the deeper part of yourself who you are and where you are going before the world gets its version in, because the world will get its version in. By 9:30, you will have absorbed a dozen other people's opinions about what is possible, most of them from people who have organized nothing. The morning is not a productivity slot. It is the only part of the day where the first voice you hear can be yours. So here is the shape of it, small enough to actually survive. In the morning, read the sentence from step 1. Name the 2 or 3 things today that would genuinely move it, not the 12 that would merely fill it. And say one line over yourself about the person you are becoming, out loud, even though it feels ridiculous for the first week or so. At night, one honest look back. Did today match the sentence, yes or no? No self-flagellation either way. That is 4 or 5 minutes, morning and night. If you want that laid out and ready to run, I made a free daily auto-suggestion sheet, and it is genuinely all of this on one page. The aim at the top, the handful of moves that matter today. What is going right? Because you will need that on the flat weeks, the lines you speak over yourself, and a short evening check. It comes with 3 short emails that show you how to use it properly, because a sheet used wrongly is just paperwork. It is the first link in the description. It costs nothing, and it is the difference between agreeing with these 7 steps and running them. Print it tonight, put it where you will see it before your phone. So there are the 7. Decide what the life is for. In one sentence you would still want if nobody ever found out. Find the will to fail and write down honestly what success would cost you. Then act as if failure were off the table for 1 hour and watch how many small hedges you had been paying for. Get it on paper the same day and keep the pages. Give yourself 12 small, pointless commands and obey them until being obeyed is normal. Correct the course instead of taxiing back to the start. And run the whole thing daily, long after it stops being interesting. Nothing in that list is new. That is the point of it. It was assembled by people who were watching a country come apart at the seams and who noticed that some individuals inside that country were quietly building anyway, and who sat down and worked out what those individuals were doing differently. They had every excuse available to them, real ones. And a woman sat down in 1936 and told them that the thing standing between them and the life they wanted was not the depression. It was a preference they had never examined. You are being handed the same 7 steps in a far easier decade. The peg is one sentence. Go and write it tonight before the day gets away from you. Everything else in this video hangs off that one line, and it takes 90 seconds, and almost nobody watching will do it. Be the one who does.